Podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right?
Oh!
The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Hello, Arrowhead Addicts, everyone there in Chiefs Kingdom. My name is Matt Connor. We're coming to you live for our Chiefs pregame. Week 5, the Minnesota Vikings are hosting today at US Bank Stadium. I will be joined shortly by Joe Summers. Want to let you also know, stick around here for halftime. Our buddies are all going to be here. All the familiar faces are going to be around today. After the game, our friend Matt Verderam will also be here from Sports Illustrated, formerly Arrowhead Addict as well, and Van-Sided, along with Patrick Allen. If you're in the P&L district today, by the way, you can say hey to our friend Sterling Holmes, who's actually working remotely from there. So yeah, that's the rundown. Look, big game today. It's not a conference game. It's not a, typical divisional showdown, but the Buffalo Bills lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. There is a chance here to get a 1-game lead in the race. The Chiefs are already technically number 1 in the AFC due to tiebreakers. However, there's a real chance here for the Chiefs to pull ahead and get a lead. And when you look on paper, you're thinking, the Vikings are 1-3. They're looking at the divisional basement there in the NFC North. Looks like it's going to be for someone else. But yeah, we'll talk about that with Joe here as to just how bad are these Vikings, how good are these Chiefs, do the records represent? Before we dive in, Joe, by the way, how are you today in week 5?
I am doing swell. It's a beautiful day outside. We get to take on Kirk Cousins, the turnover-prone Vikings. I'm expecting Mahomes to check off that last team that he hasn't beaten before in the league. I'm feeling good. It's a big game. I'm feeling good. I hope you're feeling the same.
Yeah. So I was just talking about the fact that this is a real it's an intriguing opportunity because it really opens up the chance for an early lead in the running here. Some cushion, some security in this AFC race. The Bills fall, Ravens fall, Bengals haven't been the Bengals all year. The AFC North is going to kind of eat each other, if you will. And as we watched Miami run out of gas last season, I'm not sure I trust Mike McDaniels to have his team ready for 17 games until he proves he can do it. So it looks like we're going to be able to get an early lead and maybe stay those favorites for a while. But Minnesota comes first. I don't want to get ahead of that. So before we get into that, just do you have any brief thoughts on what you saw today in the AFC? Yeah.
Well, for me, essentially the way that the last several weeks have played out, it gives us an opportunity to wipe the slate clean and erase the mistake of week 1 against the Lions. Like everything is falling into place perfectly for us, essentially, to control our own destiny, like you said.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of teams that are really close that on a good day could beat anyone in the AFC, but that the inconsistency is there enough that they're not going to be picked to beat us. So theoretically, could we lose one of these teams in the playoffs? Sure, as it stands. But right now, we're the favorites running away, whereas after the week 1 loss to the Lions, we were a little bit more concerned. So feeling good about how the AFC looked today.
Joe, let's go over. So here's today's inactives. Nick Bolton is sitting this one out, along with offensive lineman Mike Caliendo, and then a trio of defensive linemen, Keandre Coburn, who's 6th-round rookie, yet to really play, Matt Dickerson, and then B.J. Thompson, 5th-round rookie. Matt Dickerson has played his way into a rotational run-stuffing role. He's now out this week. Bolton is the big one, as this is his 3rd game missed. However, he came back as questionable. We've seen Drew Tranquill in that role. When you look at that list, anything strike you there? Any surprises there, or you're not even worried about it?
I wouldn't say necessarily surprises. I don't love seeing Bolton miss 3 games. Like you said, like we need him to be healthy for the long term. And I don't think that we have to have him on the field to win today, but I mean, you get to 3 games, and I think that there's certainly cause for concern for the rest of the season. That's the only one that really stands out to me, though. What do you think?
Yeah, I just want to note here that also, these guys are out, but there's another like 10 names on the injured list, by the way. Even if they're full participants in practice, the Chiefs, like legally, like by the league's rules, have to list any level of injuries. And Drew Tranquill is on that list. Jack Cochran is on that list. If there's another injury in the second level, things could look actually pretty thin because we just lost Cole Christensen last week too. So something to watch there. We just want to come away today happy and healthy. That's what I'm thinking.
Absolutely. And I think that there are a lot of things that can be built from and learned for both the defense and the offense. Like defensively, this is a huge test for Trent McDuffie and the secondary that's been really promising. You get to take it. Justin Jefferson is the dude. Jordan Addison looks good. TJ Hawkinson's hard to cover. So there's a lot of good tests defensively. I'm not overly worried, but I think that it's a good opportunity for some of those depth pieces to step up as well.
I want to ask you for some key breakdowns here. No one has the man to guard Justin Jefferson. Like no one's got the guy that you're like, oh, we'll just take him, put him on him, and we don't have to worry about it. And that's not a thing. A lot of teams obviously choose to double Justin Jefferson. That's nothing new to him, whatever. What do you expect to see from Spags against him? Or at least what do you hope Spags is going to choose to do against Justin Jefferson in particular?
I hope that he takes the approach of trying to put as much pressure on Kirk Cousins as possible. You're not going to cover Justin Jefferson. He's going to get open or he's going to make a contested catch. So I want to see us kind of attack the offense in other areas. The offensive line for the Vikings is not very good. Chris Jones and Karlaftis and the whole defensive line could have huge days. I would want to see some of these creative blitzes that we so often see from Spags to confuse Kirk Cousins, because I think the way to beat Justin Jefferson is to beat Kirk Cousins, because I don't really think you can beat Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. Great point. You brought up their offensive line. It's important to know, at least if you're in the Vikings seat, if you want any bit of optimism, the starting center Garrett Bradbury is actually back this week for the first time since week 1 when he was injured after just a handful of snaps. So that will at least be some level of an upgrade, you hope. Although, honestly, Garrett Bradbury has never been one of the better centers in football. Or at least like on a level like Creed Humphrey. So however much some sort of like center upgrade is going to affect overall, I'm really not sure, in this instance. But if you're Minnesota, you're at least saying that much for today to try to get back. What do you think about, you mentioned the turnovers, right? The Vikings turn the ball over a lot. They've had a red zone turnover in every game this year, right? However, if you think about that like all their games are also pretty close. So you look at that record and they're 1-3, but there are a lot of like, tiny plays like, oh, if only this had happened, only if that fumble hadn't happened, like whatever, they could easily be 3-1. Like, what do you make it like? Do you think this is kind of deceptive in a way, their record, or are you like, no, your record, what you says you are, and every team has the bounces like that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit deceptive. Like, I don't think that the Vikings are on the same level as an 0-4 team usually is. They've got a -8 turnover differential. Chiefs are at -3 for all the grief that we feel like we have about not winning the turnover battle. They're at -8. Turnovers are a fickle stat, typically, like the differential at least. So I don't think that they're going to continue to turn the ball over in the red zone every single week. Like they've got 7 lost fumbles, and 4 interceptions from Kirk on the season. That's unsustainable. It's not going to stay that way the whole time. On the other hand, I do think that there is evidence that Kirk Cousins makes mistakes in big moments, which is what he's doing in the red zone. I don't think he's going to turn a ball over every single time, but I do think that we'll have opportunities to attack him. I see them somewhere more of like a middling team as opposed to the worst team in the league or a true Super Bowl contender. But until that they can prove they can hold on to the ball, I think that's a huge point of emphasis for Spags defense. Trent McDuffie has been a ball hawk so far. We know we can get a strip sack. So I want to see a real aggressive defensive scheme today.
When you look at this defense of Minnesota and their tendencies, and then you look at the Chiefs and how the offense has kind of been, there's kind of a lingering argument. Like, who's at fault? Is it really that bad? Whatever. When you look at the offense, what do you expect to see from the Chiefs offensively in Week 5?
Well, so the Vikings under Brian Flores have been extremely blitz heavy. They're the only team in the league with the blitz rate over 50%. They're blitzing 57% of the time.
Yeah.
And Mahomes, he's faced 20 games in his career where he has been blitzed over 50% of the time, and he has passed for at least 284 yards 18 of those 20 times. He carves up the blitz. We've seen it back and forth. So if they blitz all the time, then I think that Pat's going to carve them up. And if they don't, then there's going to be plenty of time for hopefully one of these receivers to step up against a porous secondary if he's going to be protected, if he's going to have time. So either a rookie wide receiver is going to have an opportunity to step up, or Pat Mahomes is just going to carve him up with like short little dicey passes and march down the field that way. I think one of those two things.
Yeah, I wondered what you thought of this because Brian Flores is new there, right? Mm-hmm. I like Brian Flores as a defensive coordinator.
Me too.
Like I like him as a defensive mind in the NFL. I think he's a quality coach. And we've seen this with Spags. In fact, we see it most years that Spags usually needs a few games before we see the defense kind of round into form. We're often asking questions like, why is Ben Neiman playing out there? Why is Dan Sorensen playing? Like, why are we dropping defensive linemen, into this cover? Usually we're asking a lot of questions of Spags. This year, we've seen the instant results. So we're still playing Brian Flores early in his tenure as he's learning how to use his players. If I'm Minnesota, I'm thinking, hey, with each game, we're learning how to use the guys. They just got Marcus Davenport back just last week.
To your point, Harrison Smith, they blitzed him a bunch last week. He had 3 sacks after not getting a sack in something like 17 straight games, something like that. So, yeah, you're right on there.
I absolutely believe that Harrison Smith is a very key factor for their defense today, how they use him and whatnot. So I guess I just wonder what you think of this being yet another game, knowing the defense a little bit more. Should Minnesota have a little bit more optimism because of that?
I think that the optimism they can have is in the idea that Brian Flores is a good defensive coordinator. And if he's a good defensive coordinator, then he's likely not just going to repeatedly blitz Mahomes, which we know that he'll crush. Like I imagine he'll throw some different looks at him. If I'm a Vikings fan, though, like the only way that the Chiefs lose this game is if Kirk Cousins and the offense explode, essentially, is I don't see us losing a 13-10 game to a defense that has this many holes. So if I'm a Vikings fan, I want Kirk to have a big day. And if I'm a Chiefs fan, I'm feeling pretty good about that being the X factor.
Hey, last week, Isaiah Pacheco, big game in his home state, New Jersey. It was great to see. Do you think that extent, like, what do you think of what the Chiefs are going to do out of the backfield this game? You've been predicting some good things for McKinnon for a little bit now.
And that hasn't happened. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, take us through the backfield here and what you think.
So McKinnon's been getting a lot of snaps, just not the targets or the carries or anything like that. Like Pacheco is balling right now. He ranks near the top of the league in most statistics about breaking tackles or forced missed tackles per touch, things like that. Like he breaks tackles really, really good. And the Vikings are bottom 10 in the league in missed tackle rate. They miss a lot of tackles. So it's a perfect matchup for Pacheco to bully them, frankly, the exact same running style that we saw last week. I don't think their defense is equipped to handle it. So I think that he's in for a big day. His props right now are sitting at like 56.5 rushing yards. I think he could go over the century mark again, though I'd probably expect like an 80-ish yard day from him. But I think Pacheco is showing that we can lean on him, especially as Mahomes learns to trust the receivers.
I love it. I would take 80 yards. That works out well for me. I think it would work out well for the Chiefs. Folks, Joe, I want to go to you for some great bets, some of your favorite bets. Before we do, however, just want to let all of you know, if you're out there listening, hanging out with us, again, as always, we appreciate it. If you want to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button or bell or ring it, whatever it is, so you know what's coming up. But also want to let you know, our friends at DraftKings, they're running a promotion with us that you won't want to miss. New users, that's only new users, by the way, can place a $5 first bet to instantly claim $200 in bonus bets. You'll also be rewarded for a no-sweat single-game parlay every single day when you opt in. All you have to do is use our code Arrowhead. Using our code Arrowhead not only gets you these great bonuses, but it also directly supports our podcast. Trust me, it's a big, big boost to us. If you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, if you've been looking down, kicking rocks for the first 4 weeks going, I just have a hard time committing in relationships to a particular place. DraftKings, make them your boyfriend or girlfriend. Make sure to use our code Arrowhead to maximize your first bets and your parlays. This offer is only available to new customers who are 21 and over and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check our episode description for the full terms of the offer to see if you qualify. If people qualify, Joe Summers, what should they be betting on today?
So there's a few things I'm targeting. The first, my favorite bet in the game is the Chiefs first half -2.5 against the spread. We didn't cover the first half against the Lions, but we've covered 3 straight first half spreads. The Vikings, notoriously slow starters, are 0-4 against the spread in the first half so far. We know that Mahomes is going to be pissed off because he played for his standards poorly last week. I think he's going to come out firing, and I think that the offense is going to be able to lean on Pacheco and then an angry Mahomes while the defense puts enough pressure on Kirk Cousins. So we're taking the first half. And then I like Pacheco over 56.5 yards. Like I said, he's one of the best at breaking tackles, and the Vikings are one of the worst defenses at making tackles. So it fits perfectly. And then I also love Patrick Mahomes has hit his rushing prop every game this season. He's averaging just over 38 rushing yards per game. And until we see him not run the ball and actually trust the receivers, then I'm going to like his rushing yards as well. I think that especially if they blitz and play a lot of man, that Mahomes will be able to run around the same way we've seen him last several weeks. And then finally, Rashee Rice over 32.5 receiving yards, baby. Rashee Rice has some excellent advanced numbers. His yards per target, his the route participation, the amount of receiving yards he's responsible for when he's on the field, all elite numbers among some of the top receivers in the league. The Rashee Rice breakout is coming, and against a terrible secondary in a situation that we know Mahomes doesn't really trust a lot of receivers, I need to see Rashee Rice step up today. 32.5 over receiving yards for that guy.
Nice. I love all that. Plus, I love the shoulder shimmy you gave us with that. It was like the cherry on top. Look, as we come into this, by the way, some people in the comments are asking about a couple of guys in particular. Just curious, do you think that Sky Moore at least adds something to his resume today after sort of a disappointing first 4 games to the second season?
Well, I hope. It hasn't looked too good to this point. And he's not getting targeted at all. Like his target numbers for the amount of routes that he's running are really low, which tells me either he's not creating separation or Mahomes doesn't trust him to throw the ball. Both are bad. Whereas Rashee Rice, he's getting targeted on 32% of his routes. That's a crazy number. He's been targeted at least 5 times in 3 of our 4 games. It really feels like Sky Moore is taking the back seat. And until I see Mahomes consistently target him the way that he does Tony when he's in the game or Rice when he's in the game, then I'm not going to expect much from him, frankly, as disappointing as it is. I hope that he proves me wrong, but the participation in the offense just hasn't been there.
Yeah. I totally get it. Before we go, I want 2 things from you. I want a surprise performer of the day, and then we'll get your prediction here before we get to game time. But before the final score, Joe, if you had it could be defense or offense. Maybe it's James Winchester, long snapper. I don't know. Whatever you want to make it. Who's your surprise performer of today?
Well, first I'll go Rice for the reasons I just laid out. This is the worst defense or the second worst defense we faced other than the Bears, rather. I think Rice has a good game. Defensively, I think last week's touchdown, potentially game-saving tackle of Breece Hall might be the confidence boost that we need for Brian Cook to catapult forward. I want to see Brian Cook have a big day today. TJ Hawkinson's a tough guard. We know that we're going to need to have some double teams and things like that on Justin Jefferson. So if he can kind of build from the momentum of making that kind of a play. I want to keep seeing the young secondary players step up like himself.
Yeah, could be a big day for the safeties today. I think if I had a surprise performer, I'm going to go Kadarius Toney.
Let's see it. I love it.
He's had a swollen toe. He's been allowed to play, but it's definitely on a snap count. But like Rashee Rice, when he's out there, he's targeted. Like, forget everyone else. Those two, when they're out there, Mahomes is looking for them for sure, and or the plays are scripted for them for sure. So I think we haven't heard much about Tony's toe, which is a good thing. I think that means he's getting a little bit better. If he's going to be out there for even 40, 50% of the snaps, I think he's going for 100. So he would be my surprise performer on offense. And then on defense, I don't know how it's a surprise performer, but I think even if Garrett Bradbury is still under center, I think Chris Jones really feasts today in some way. Even if it's just pressures and Cousins is able to get the ball out of his hands, I like forcing it out of his hands in some way, hopefully into the waiting arms of like Trent McDuffie or someone else in the secondary. So, yeah, here's hoping. Final score prediction and anything else you want to say about the Vikings game before we go. Joe Summers.
So the Vikings are 1-7-1 against the spread in their last 9 games as underdogs. They've given up at least 32 points in 7 of those 9 games. So they're underdogs today against Mahomes. I think we're scoring over 30. I'm taking 34, and we'll give them 20. We'll give Justin Jefferson a touchdown. But this is the get right game for the offense after struggling last week. And if we don't put forth a good offensive performance today, then I think we can start worrying about it long term.
So this is potentially a tipping point game for you,
or at least to raise a level of concern as opposed to just looking at it and saying, it's fine, it's no big deal. Because then at that point you're over a quarter of the way through the season and there's no receiver that you can trust. I could see how that could start to snowball. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that someone like a Rice steps up, or even maybe a McKinnon out of the backfield. They're going to get it done against a defense like this.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say the Chiefs win. I think it's going to be closer. I think it's going to be like 28-24. I think Brian Flores is figuring some things out. And I'm also not trusting the Chiefs to be like, I think it's going to be better defense and not as great offense. And I think that's going to equal just eking something out there. But we shall see. Look, at this point, a win's a win either way. We just want to leave happy and healthy. That's where I'm at with all of this. So look, folks, if you're not already following Joe Summers at I am Joe Summers, gotta follow him. Great advice. He's been a great addition to the team here. As always, my name is Matt Connor. We will be back halftime. Come back halftime. We'll have the full breakdown. All the emotion will be here at halftime, one way or the other. And then after the game, our boy Matt Verderam will be here. Patrick Allen will be here. Joe, you're still going to be around through all this, right?
Sure will.
Joe is our all-man shenanigans. I won't see you until Tuesday with Sterling because I got to do a lot of writing. But until then, let's go to US Bank Stadium, right? Let's do it. It's game time. Go Chiefs.
Let's go, baby.